Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion on this Tuesday morning. And we look back to yesterday. We talked about the Fed. Fed was the storyline. And everybody was wondering, what's going to happen? Is it going to be Jay Powell? Looks like it is. Looks like the president's made up his mind. So the good news is the markets popped and had a really nice spike very quickly. As a matter of fact, the Dow was up 100 plus points. Next thing you know, it's up 300 points. Oh, but then it started to sell off a little bit as well. It hit some highs towards the final hour, actually dropped fairly decently towards the end of the day, and actually finished the day barely in positive territory, up about 17 points. NASDAQ, sort of a similar path, hit new highs, got over 16,000, got over 16,200. I think it was 16,212. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden there's pressure on, and we just started watching this thing get hit. We're seeing a little bit of that same kind of volatility today, this up and down that we've seen so far early in the day. As a matter of fact, when I'm looking at both the Dow and the NASDAQ today, it's extraordinarily volatile. But we'll get into that in 1 second. So the NASDAQ down, and as a matter of fact, in the final 30 minutes or so, it dropped well over 100 plus points, finished the day down 200 points. So a lot of pressure being applied onto the NASDAQ. With that, we had a heck of a lot of two things, volatility, and we also had a lot of volume. We talk about the V's all the time, velocity, volume, and volatility. Well, let me tell you, all were in play yesterday. They seem to be in play today as well. Yesterday, we had a range somewhere, call it between the low 17s to the mid to upper 19s for the volatility index. As you know, we point that out each and every day on the take. It's been stair-stepping tighter, but moving up as we've been talking about it over the last probably 5, 6, 7 days. And here we are now. We find ourselves yesterday closing above 19. As a matter of fact, around 19.15 or thereabouts. Volume yesterday, 51 million contracts. We've been talking about this 50 million club. We used to talk about the 40 million club, and we talk about how November we're averaging 44 million, then we're averaging 45 million, and that number is going to keep on rising if we continue to see the kind of volumes like we saw yesterday with 51 million contracts trading. Apple, nearly 3 million contracts, 2.77 million contracts yesterday. Tesla, 1.6 million contracts. NVIDIA was just over a million. And then you've got Ford. Ford, whether that you want to call it a meme stock or a rebel stock or whatever you want to say, we all have been watching how volumes in Ford have absolutely exploded to the upside. Ford now trades a heck of a lot like an EV stock, which it kind of is, right? So, and that's been one of the drivers. So that is something that has definitely stood out. So energy finished the day up nearly 2%, had a really nice strong finish yesterday for energy. Financials actually contributed pretty nicely, as well as the 10 years back from those 155, 157 area and closed yesterday around 162. So you've got that combination there. You've got a little bit of a recovery, a slight recovery from crude from those 75s up towards 76, 76 and a half, somewhere in that sort of a range from yesterday. Consumer discretion, that had a little bit of a positive day, but we had some definite pressure in technology, and we had some huge pressure in some of those communications names as well on the tech side. And we look at that, and you can see that very well reflected with that NASDAQ turn late in the day and that sell-off that we had seen there. Casinos, they were strong yesterday. As a matter of fact, up 4 to 6%. You look at Las Vegas Sands, you look at Wynn. Now they have been beaten, so it makes some sense that occasionally we're going to see those kind of names moving to the upside. We also had a pretty decent day out of Ford and GM. Also, Moderna yesterday up about 7%, but there was a lot of negatives out there as well. Take a look over at MasterCard, under some serious pressure, down about 5.5%. Visa was down a couple of percent. You look over at Under Armour, that was down about 5% yesterday as well. Throw in Peloton, because every single day it seems like Peloton's down, what, 5, 6, yesterday, 6.5%. CrowdStrike down about 7%. And some of those really high octane type names, Okta, DocuSign, those names. Now, I'm not saying they're terrible names. I'm just saying that, you know, when you look at these PEs and we talk about some of those that are stretched for sure, that have been publicly traded for a long period of time, and these are companies that people are very familiar with, but we also know that some of these multiples sometimes do get incredible nosebleed areas. Those names are under a little bit of pressure as well. As a matter of fact, you take a look over at ARC and Kathy Wood in that group, they've definitely seen a little bit of pressure of late because of some of that exposure to these high multiple type, incredible growth type names. So as we get in today, volatility, oh yeah, we got some volatility. There is no doubt about that. As a matter of fact, I'll start with the volatility index. We are now trading in a range, call it 19 to above 20. So the range has gotten a little tighter, but it's also slid up a little bit further because we actually are printing above 20. We pulled back a little bit when I just took a peek right before I came on. So we were in the upper 19s, but call it somewhere between 1950 and maybe even 21, something like that. So keep an eye on that volatility. We know volume is there, and velocity. Oh yeah, we got velocity. Take a look at the up and down that we have seen already in the first hour of the day today in just the NASDAQ alone. We were down about 20 points. We're down about 40 points. We're down about 80 points. We recovered all the way. We get into positive territory actually for a moment, up 30 or 40 points. Then we go to flat. Next thing you know, you look over, the NASDAQ's down 90 points. Maybe it's 100 points right now. We have seen that definitely, especially given the size of that versus the Dow, the volatility, the velocity that we are seeing within the NASDAQ is just absolutely extraordinary. So 165 on the 10 year, so a little bit higher than it was. Bitcoin has been under some pressure. We've been talking about Bitcoin. It wasn't too terribly long ago. We were talking about 69,000 for Bitcoin. We've pulled back, and here we are now trading somewhere close to that 57,000 level. So certainly we have seen a pretty dramatic pullback and a little bit of pressure on some of this in the crypto space. So early on, energy, take a look at it. It was up nearly 2.5%. Why? Well, you take a look over at crude, and you see crude actually trading 77, actually even into the 78 kind of area as well. We've had a nice little spike out of that for energy, now up about 2.7% as we've gotten a little bit deeper into the trading session. What's not really moving a whole lot, but I'll tell you what, at least it's a positive territory. The financials up nearly 0.75%, but there's pressure on tech, there's pressure on semis. When you see that, and they're both down somewhere close to 0.75%, that tells you a lot about some of the pressures that we are seeing now presently on the NASDAQ. But as I just mentioned, that can change in a heartbeat. As a matter of fact, we talked about some of the velocity of these moves. It's absolutely been incredible. So a couple of big movers that we've got to the upside today. Take a look at what's going on with DoubleTree, take a look at what's going on with Dollar Tree, not DoubleTree, Dollar Tree. That's one of those names, up about 6% today. We're also seeing some of these beta energy names absolutely on fire after being pushed to the downside as we've watched crude go from 85 down towards 75 with this little bit of a bump up that we're seeing today. A nice day for names like APA and Devon Energy, some of those names, Oxy, Pioneer, all of those names actually contributing and playing a pretty nice role today in terms of some of the energy names. Micron, Western Digital, they're having a pretty good day, despite the fact that I just got done talking about semiconductors under some pressure, NVIDIA and some of those names under pressure. But Micron actually trading very well. As a matter of fact, trading extremely well, and there has been option activity in there for multiple days that do expire on Friday. So just keep that in mind as well. But some very bullish activity that we have seen there. Chinese names today actually moving along as well with Baidu and JD, throwing a little bit of PDD and all of those in positive territory. Tesla continues to kind of tease us. It got up towards that 1200 level once again, sort of eased back recently as well. Best Buy under some serious pressure today. Seemed like their numbers overall were pretty good. Some of the margins were some of the concern that people had. Supply chain was definitely a conversation within that earnings call. That's down 14, 15%. We're looking at Best Buy. That's also a stock that had an absolutely incredible move to the upside in a very short period of time since September to now. So it's understandable that you could see a bit of a pullback unless you just absolutely blew everybody out of the water with the numbers. That's not what happened. So Zoom under some pressure as well, down about 13%. Moderna today down about 4.5%, 5% as well. So a little bit of pressure there. Got two unusuals. Then I got the noon show, and later on today, I've got the 4 o'clock show or the 5 o'clock show on the Eastern time with Fast Money. But first will be the halftime report with Scott and the gang. So number one, DraftKings. Now, with some of the movement that we've already had, just bear in mind why I always like to point out where the price was when these occurred. So DraftKings stock was trading 37 when I took a peek a little while ago. It was in 35. So it's pulled back, which means these options are actually a little bit cheaper than when they were buying them. So stock was trading just above 37 in DraftKings. They bought 9,400 of this Friday's expiring November 26th, the 38 calls. So those were just out of the money. Now they're a little bit further out of the money. They were about 37 cents up to about 70 cents. Obviously, with the stock pulling back, they're even a little bit cheaper now. So that was something that hit, and I thought that was very interesting early on. Also early on hitting, and it's been hitting, Apple. Apple has been on an absolute rip-roaring tear of late, and the option activity has been there. A lot of it has been very short. Some of it has actually gone out in time as well. Today, that's a great example of what we're seeing. 10,000 of the December 31st, so very end of the year, December 31st expiring, the 160 call. Stock was trading 160. It's a little bit cheaper now as well. Now, what they did was they put on a spread. They bought the 160s, they sold the 175 calls, just so people have a full idea of exactly the entire trade. But we'll focus on what was bought. Those 160 calls, 10,000 of them, going from $5.30 up to about $5.50 for those calls. Kind of getting expensive, even for those big funds and everybody else who's trading out there. So they decided to spread that off by selling those 170 calls against those options. But we're highlighting what they bought rather than the entire spread, but just letting you know what the full trade was. Folks, I got a busy day. I look forward to seeing you on the halftime report. It's going to be an awesome day. We're going to see some volatility, some velocity. Oh, and I'm sure we're going to see some great volumes today as well. Have a great day of trading.